I lost my mouse. All right, I've got it. Thanks for that, Madeline.
Sure thing.
All right. All right, so what makes up Agile? It's really all about the team. And this is a difference for marketers, because a lot of marketers, we've been taught to think about our specialization, right? I'm a graphic designer. That's what I do for the marketing team. I'm an SEO expert. That's what I do for the marketing team. But it's amazing what you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. And I actually like to flip that on its head and say, it's amazing what you can accomplish if there's not somebody to blame. Because I think that's part of why we compartmentalize into our individual selves, is because yes, we want the credit, but we also want to say, well, you know, I know that graphic didn't look great, but that's not really my problem. So getting into that Agile mindset says that I'm making a commitment to a team and I'm having shared accountability across that team. So the heart of Agile teams, again, is that shared sense of responsibility, a common mission and purpose. So a truly Agile team is a cross-functional group of people that can design, define, build, and deploy a unit of value for the customer. How does that look in marketing? It says, I have a website that I need to build. I'm going to, with my team, put all the right people on the team that I need to design it, build it, develop it, and deploy it out into the real world. Now, what's interesting is that in the startup world, you're already Agile, depending on how big you are. If you're just a handful of people, you actually probably don't need an Agile methodology to put in place, because you're already a small group of people, 5 to 11 people. You're talking all the time. You probably are wearing multiple hats, and it doesn't really matter. You're focused on the mission of making your startup successful. However, when your startup starts to grow and you start to get beyond that group of 5 to 11 people, and now you've got 50 people or 100 people or 150 people, how do you maintain that same level of flexibility that you had when you were just 10 people? And Agile, as well as scaling Agile, is a way for you to do that. As you start to stitch these teams together, and the key is to keep teams small, focused on delivering value, and have everybody on that team you need to deliver that piece of value to the customer. It's also about creating and maintaining the flow of work. So we talked about how things can get choked up in the hose and breaking down that piece of work into bite-sized pieces. And I'd like to use the example of a white paper. So I'm a little embarrassed to admit it, but I just finished a white paper that was 26 pages long, way too long. And had I delivered that white paper out to the market, it probably took 3 months to write. Without testing it along the way, there's a good chance that I could put it out in the market and it would fall flat. And I would have wasted 3 months worth of time developing this piece of white paper, gotten the designers in, had all the people reviewing it. Instead, what I did is I tried to break that down and said, well, let me just look at the outline, and let me put the outline in front of some customers and make sure that I'm delivering what they're wanting. Then what I did is I created a more fleshed out outline, and I got that in peer review and said, okay, is this the content that we want? And at any point along the way, I could stop work and readjust that work instead of creating the whole thing, putting it out to the marketplace, and somebody saying, well, why isn't there a part on X, right? Why does your white paper around Agile marketing not include a section on T-shaped skills? And I would have, I would have had a do-over, or I would have had to iterate into the next version. We're also looking to limit the amount of reactive and walk-up work, right? So it's something that dogs marketing. Somebody comes up and they're like, hey, can we do an email about this? Can we create a graphic about that? And the answer is yes, and let's put it in the backlog. Let's create a list of all these ideas so we can visualize all the available ideas and then pull in the ones that make sense when we have capacity. So let's prioritize that work. Let's visualize that work. We're also looking to eliminate the waste. In marketing, how that tends to look is wait times. So as things go up for review and down for review. Again, if you're a smaller marketing team, you've got this down, right? You can just lean over to Jane in the next cube and say, hey, what do you think about this? But if you're in a more structured organization, you're trying to eliminate those wait times so that you can get things through the system more quickly. We're also looking to adopt a continuous learning mindset. So, I love this quote by Jeff Bezos. It's not an experiment if you know it's going to work, right? And the other thing I see that dogs marketing teams is especially, as brilliant startup individuals, right? Where we've got tons of ideas and we want to do them all and they all seem urgent. They all seem like we should be able to do them tomorrow. So how do we take that work? We break it down and run those experiments. So again, going back to the white paper, what I was really doing was running a series of experiments. So I took the outline, I ran an experiment. How did that fall? What did I learn? I incorporated that into the next iteration. I drafted it, I got peer review, I got that fast feedback. Then I incorporated that into the more complete draft. I had that reviewed, and you can see just over time, I was gradually evolving to the final place. And before we go into the next slide, let me take a pause again. What questions do you have? All right, I have to wait for the awkwardness because it takes people time to unmute and jump in. If you don't know, there is an Agile Marketing Manifesto. So much like there's an Agile Software Manifesto, this one's available at agilemarketingmanifesto.org. I've highlighted a few words here: validated learning, collaboration, adaptive and iterative, customer discovery, flexible, responding to change, small experiments. Do you know what those tend to, besides being about Agile marketing, there are also characteristics found in startups. So my guess is almost everybody on this call, if you're involved in a startup or interested in startups, have these characteristics in common. So that's a segue to our first breakout, and where we want to discuss what does it mean to adopt a lean Agile mindset. And let me just see how many people we have on the call now. We've got, we've still got about a dozen folks, which we could just have an open conversation, but what I'll do is I'm gonna put this Jamboard link into the chat. And if you wouldn't mind jumping in there, I'd like to give you a little bit of time to start populating it with stickies. And we're really looking to think about, what does it mean to adopt a lean Agile mindset in your organization? Maybe put a sticky up on what way is your organization already doing this? In what way is your organization not doing it? And let me flip over to the Jamboard so I can see it. And I was like, there's nothing happening. And then I was like, oh, that's because I was on a screenshot. All right, looks like some folks are in there. So in order, how this works is you just click on the sticky icon if you've never used a Jamboard. There's a sticky note icon on the left, and it should pop up a blank sticky. You can choose a color and then just start writing away. And I guess, this is one part of the discussion. If you'd also like to just raise a question, feel free to go off mute and ask your question directly. This is also a discussion/coaching session. All right, we've got some stickies coming in. Pivoting to changing work environment and flow, and delivering courses that address issues of presentation and community online. Teams choose the work. Commit to the work, responsible for the results. Nice. It sounds like that sounds like an experienced Agilist talking. And I might call on you too, just so we can, I'd like to hear some voices. So I will give you a heads up. Robin T, I'm gonna ask you for your opinion, and then Paul. So Robin, why don't you share your thoughts on how your organization is or isn't adopting a lean agile mindset, and then feel free to read out your sticky if you put one up on the board. Are you there, Robin? All right, I see Karen. You're sitting there.
I just joined like 2 minutes ago, so I'm just watching. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's great. Well, I'll pose the question and you can choose to answer it or not. So my first question to you is, how familiar with Agile are you?
I am trying to get into a product owner role, and I did the certification for Scrum Master and for product owner. So I kind of have the logic of it, but I don't have a lot of traction personally with it. So I'm really interested in Agile. I like the basic idea of the team making the decisions. I like the nimbleness of it. So there's a lot of pieces of it that I feel like my personality is drawn to it.
Right.
And by the way, Robin has posted in the chat that she's back. So she.
Oh, good. Good to see you, Robin. Did you want to contribute? My question for you was just verbally, in what ways is your organization embodying the Agile mindset, or in what ways do you feel like it's not embodying it? Oh, I think she said she got pulled away. All right, Paul, you're up. That's the hard thing when video's not on. I get no visuals. I'm like, are you there? Are you not there? All right, who else would like to share? I'm gonna open it up.
I'll share.
All right.
I think the biggest thing for Agile to me is this idea of this cross-functional team, and they're all working on the same value stream. So it doesn't lend to these siloed kind of individual projects. Everybody works together on a common value, and our team, I feel like we walk away with something that we're all proud of, and you almost can't tell where one person stopped and the other person began, because the work really goes together well.
That's great. And for those who are less advanced than you, how would you describe a value stream?
It is the value that is at the end of the stream is what the customer wants or what the customer needs. You determine what is the value to the customer of this project, and you're all working towards that.
Great. Ellen, are you on? Everyone's very quiet. All right, so let's read out the stickies. Thanks for that, Marcy. So the teams, we talked about the teams choosing the work, committing to the work, and are all responsible for the results. And then somebody posted here too, Lean Agile is not to get too far out when designing solutions, being able to iterate as things needs, expressed needs changed. So that sounds like a very experienced Agilist. And I don't know who put that out there. It looks like a dolphin did. But if that's yours, feel free to comment on it. Pivoting to changing work environment and flow and delivering courses that address issues of presentation and community online. Is that yours, Madeline? and trial and error in increments.
Madeline says she's not sure how to unmute.
Okay.
It's in the lower left corner.
Yeah, it's like a little toggle bar. It says start video, stop video. It says, all right, well, you could also just type in the chat.
You can also just hold down the space bar when you want to talk, and that's like using a radio, and then you let go of your space bar and you're done talking and your mic goes back to mute.
Oh. So Madeline, oh, I wonder if I can unmute you, Madeline. Look at that, I just unmuted you. No, I didn't. So I can see you talking, but we can't hear you. I wonder if I've got like some
There,
sort
I
of,
think you can, does that work?
that worked.
I think it's because you initiated the unmute, but on my screen, the Jamboards take up the whole screen, so I don't have any access to Zoom while looking at Jamboard. So sorry about that. That might be something I'm doing, but yes, that was my sticky.
Got it. All right. So let's go into the next section, which is how can Agile marketing help you respond to the current context? So we did talk about those multiple small experiments and wanted to spend some time about talking about how to structure a well-formed hypothesis and test that hypothesis, get the data, turn that data into insights, refine your hypothesis, and then take your next action. Because again, what I've heard, I was on a call with one of the large enterprises yesterday, and there was a woman there whose industry was being, she was in the academic testing industry. And as you can imagine, the academic testing industry is getting massively disrupted, because how that worked is you would go to a location, and a physical location with a lot of other people, and do your testing. So what happens when you can't do that anymore? I mean, you've read the articles, right? Universities are trying to figure it out. These testing organizations are trying to figure out. The students are trying to figure it out. And nobody knows how to deal with this. And she said, we've got a list, a big long list of ideas on how to attack this, but we're stuck. We're kind of frozen on this list. And so what if you can take at least one of those and start working the hypothesis? Usually there's no shortage of good ideas. There's a shortage of trying to figure out what are we trying to accomplish with those good ideas. And I find that forming a hypothesis is a great way to really hone in on what are we trying to test? How will we know it's successful? And how will we measure it? And I dropped my hypothesis slide, but I'll give you an example of a good hypothesis. Let's just say that you're promoting through Facebook, and you have a hypothesis that adding some text over your image is going to increase the performance of that Facebook campaign. So you control all your other variables, and then you add text to the image, and you form a hypothesis statement that can be proven true or false. So that's very important. If you just say, you know, I believe that adding text to a Facebook ad is going to increase response, it's too broad, right? But if you narrow that in and you say, I believe that if I add text to one image versus the other image, it will result in increased clicks and increased time spent on my website. Those are two things that are very measurable. And when tested against a control, you can see if it's true or false.
Here's my idea.
Yeah.
Are you in that? I'm listening in. It's okay. It's pretty much talking. It's talking about how, like, when there's disruption in your market or something crazy in your market. No, it's not very good. It's not very good. Like, let me show you what's going on here. I mean, I haven't been in it long enough to where it's really, it might be worth it, it might not be, but like.
What can you discuss? Oh,
like no one's been talking.
they do at least have the discussions open.
Justin,
The
are
discussion's
you
open, yeah.
part of this
Say
presentation?
anything or trying to?
Well, I've just been late to the party by 30 minutes.
I think
was
Justin
just
probably-
kind of
I
just
think
see what
you
the
probably
conversation's
need to
already
mute
like, and
them.
then if I'm the only one talking and I'm super late, you know, it's
I'm
like,
trying
who
to
knows if she
mute
said
him.
something early on, like, you know,
Yeah.
about
Yeah, it was-
chatting. So I don't know. I kind of figured to
I'm
not
not
even
able to
bother
mute
with
him.
it, you
You
know.
can mute
Yeah.
him by hovering
Greg
on the
should
top
be
right
here.
of
At
the
least he wanted to
screen.
see this. Maybe he like
Yeah.
he might not be here though. Only
And
11
Hey,
of us. There's only
Justin?
11 of us
Hey,
here.
Justin? Justin,
Oh,
There
Justin,
we go. I got him. That was pretty funny.
You've seen all those YouTube videos about that, where all these classes that are getting disrupted by people just like jumping on that have nothing to do with it.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, I have no idea who's here really. I mean, a couple of you have popped up and I really appreciate it. All right, so one of the other thing that tends to dog marketing teams is this constant tension between who is right? Like I think the button should be blue. I think the graphic should be a photo of a bird. I feel like we should spend more on Facebook versus LinkedIn. And this whole mindset of getting into what would we like to test starts to pull us away from I'm right or I think we should do this and into this mode of, well, let's test it. And what's so magical about marketing these days is it's so easy to test, right? It's super easy to put 2 posts out on social media and figure out which one has traction, right? It's super easy to make a couple of phone calls and say, hey, I've got a sketch of 2 layouts of a website. What do you think? You know, there's plenty of software out there that does UX testing. And so anytime I start to hear people going into what I call the battle of the opinions, I immediately pivot to this mindset of like, well, how would we test that? How would we test it? How would we know if it was successful? How would we know whether to do that again or to do something different again? How would we measure that? So now I'd like for you to take that into your environment and think about what some of the challenges you're facing with today, and think about what kind of hypothesis would you make? You know, first of all, name the challenge and feel free. This might be good on a Jamboard. It might be good, and I will open up the Jamboard. It might be good just as an open discussion. And I'd love to hear your stories and the stories of what challenge are you having today? How would you build a hypothesis around an idea to solve that challenge, and how would you measure it? Now I'll keep calling on people since I don't know who's here or not, and just see who answers. So Karen, you've been here for at least 5 minutes now, so now you're on deck.
I'm not working for anybody. I'm trying to think how this could relate to a job search.
That's a
but-
great one.
You know, LinkedIn is an important part of job searching. I suppose I could play around with what I put on my LinkedIn page and test it.
Mhm.
So you've given me the idea to do that. So,
Who has an idea for Karen?
or if somebody has an idea from their own life.
Yeah.
Well, I've been posting some offerings on LinkedIn, which I mean, LinkedIn is getting super saturated in terms of posting, but some have given me, you know, a lot of likes and shares, and some haven't. And so it's kind of interesting to try to figure out what that is. Like it kind of maybe is telling me a little bit more about my market. But I was also wondering if you could experiment with how you even describe your title in terms of I've been experimenting with that on LinkedIn for a while. I mean, since I've had my company for 12 years, like what's my title and how do I describe what I do? And I don't know, maybe that's a helpful.
I was just going to piggyback off of what Madeline had said. I attended one of the sessions about marketing people and seeking marketing job opportunities. And she mentioned how she was getting kind of no action. And then she joined a meetup group and just started asking the question, can anyone help me understand how I could better explain my marketing skills to someone else? And she said then she got all these coffees and she started to really develop relationships, and one of them ended up hiring her. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I went to that one too, and she had some great ideas. I think Madeline's got a good idea too with content curation on LinkedIn. Like, one of the things that's good to do on LinkedIn for whatever role you're looking for is to start posting things related to that role. I haven't been able to find anything that talks about the magic of how to have a post do, get likes and shares. Done a lot of research on that, and it seems to be pretty hard to find anything. But I am on LinkedIn, and there is certain kinds of posts that get more traffic than others. I don't know that I can articulate it yet, but with COVID, it seems to be being vulnerable seems to work. But I haven't thought of a way to be vulnerable that has to do with job searching. That those posts, the posts that seem to really get a lot of traction, are people just kind of sharing what's happening in their life. So, yeah.
So I wanted to just say that I know a guy. He used to be a creative director at a big agency here in town, and he was laid off for a while ago. We've worked together, and he does very funny posts that are vulnerable and really straightforward about how you feel about being a freelancer and looking for work. And they're very funny, they're well crafted. And he's really curated this interesting, honest style that has worked really well for him.
Well, can I get his name just so I can check out his posts?
Yeah, they're really fun. I'm gonna look him up right now, and
You can put it in the chat.
Yeah, I want to make sure I know how to spell his name.
Yeah, and so that would be really interesting to play with, Karen. It's like a vulnerable post versus a request post, a post that offers some some insight versus an offer, or a post that has an ask, and start to
that's
to
so
play
helpful.
with that.
Yeah, so because I know that having like a plan for your content seems really important for your posting on LinkedIn, but then you're helping me to figure out, well, what to put in the plan, like try different kinds of posts and see how they do. And thank you for that.
Sure. And Marcy, I would be interested, are you still doing Cleap?
Yes.
Did I get that right? Okay.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, so I'd be interested, I'm sure you're doing this already. And so maybe you could share some of your learnings with the group, how you've been able to hypothesize and test and what you've seen.
In terms of for our marketing?
Yeah, for your business.
So for our marketing, I have a lot to learn. That's why I'm here. So I wouldn't say that we're really good at it right now. In our business, I think that we do a really nice job of the agile practices, such as the daily stand-up and the iteration planning and iteration review, really help us to all be on the same page with the same goals. One of the big things you mentioned that I think is so important is deciding the work that you're not going to do was a huge piece. And I believe that that's a reason why we've been able to accomplish a lot of the things that we did. Every time we get hesitant to remove something off our list, that ends up being the very thing that would have tipped over the apple cart and made us not successful on the rest of the things. So I feel like we're very successful with that, and I'm happy with that. I think in terms of our marketing, we are at this point not doing enough with understanding that when we don't get engagement with something that we're doing, what's happening. We're really not getting into our customer's brain enough to find out, or even our potential customer's brain to find out why they're clicking somewhere, or why they're not, or why they're engaging with certain content. And so I actually think we need to get a lot better at that. So that's why I've got a lot to learn on this.
Well, yeah, and that's a great point because it's sometimes easy to generate more and more and more, and we feel very productive, right? Like we say, okay, I'm going to create these 10 online classes or these 10 pieces of content or these 10 social media posts, and we get into the business of scheduling that and creating these big plans, but we don't follow it through to measure the return.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
How
And
do you
so-
measure that return?
Well, I think Marcy touched on it a little bit. Is hopefully through your website analytics, you can measure clicks, you can measure downloads. Madeline, in your case, I feel like Madeline does online courses. Where is an end of course survey, right? What feedback loops do you have to get that input that said, okay, I just gave you this piece of value. Which section did you value the most? Which section did you value the least? What are some of the open comments that you have? How can I continue to refine this in both that qualitative way as well as the quantitative way?
I love that. Can I just ask you a detail about that?
Sure.
How do you use surveys? Do you do it through Google surveys, and do you have to have a Google account to fill it out?
Sure. Well, Google Forms can be used as a survey. So for
Okay.
example, I'm running a series of workshops right now, and at the end, one is I've got what's called a retrospective board, and that is some free flowing, and I've used Jamboards for that, which is what went well, what didn't go well, what would I change? And that's a great way to get some direct feedback from the customer. And then following that up with a more qualitative survey that gives me some data around like a net promoter score. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how much, or sometimes it's 1 to 5, sometimes it's 1 to 10, how much would you recommend this to somebody else?
Yeah.
And there's a whole school of thought around net promoter scores that says, that's really all you need. Will somebody recommend this to somebody else?
Interesting. Good to know.
So Paul, Rebecca, Anna, Vi, you're all on mute and not on video, so I'm not sure if you're there or not. I've got an empty chair with Jane. So I think Jane's gone. But let me give you a couple minutes to see if you had anything. And then I'm happy to answer any other questions. We've just got a couple of minutes, but that's enough for a question or two. Madeline?
I'd love to maybe have you speak a little bit more about the pivoting process based on marketing with like pivoting to what's going on with COVID, for example, and what kinds of things are people doing to deal with that?
Yeah, I'm going to give you an example. Again, I was on an executive call the other day, and these are executives of large organizations, and they are trying to think of, they said, again, they can brainstorm these, but then they know they have to get close to the customer. And so can you develop a panel? Maybe it's a voice of customer, maybe it's a small group of people that would be representative of your customers that you can engage with on a regular basis as you're pivoting and saying, here is my next good idea. And what do you think of this? And Marcy, I see you nodding. Is this something that you're already doing? Oh, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just agreeing with you. I think
Okay.
that's a good strategy.
Yeah. So, I think Madeline, if you can form that panel where you can say, here's what I'm thinking, because then you'll get multiple opinions. They can kind of hash it out themselves, and you'll get that insight and see. You have to reveal the sausage cooking a little bit, right? You've got to be able to reveal what we call an embarrassing MVP. So something so raw that if you put it out in public, you might be embarrassed. But you'll get that fast feedback without having to go all the way to the end to realize you've invested a lot of time in a wrong direction.
And you're saying that that's with professionals, but not necessarily with potential clients or with current clients?
Yeah, with current clients, with your representative audience. But definitely, if you've got good relationships with current clients, bring them in. Say, my world has changed. What do you guys think? This is what I'm thinking. And there's a whole tangent around design thinking that we could have another presentation around. All right, I know we're at time. I'll just drop my email here. Well, actually, I've got a slide if you wanted to take a screenshot of that. So if you need to reach out to me, I'm just at hello@melissareeve.com. Happy to continue the conversation. Again, marketing is really my passion, and I love sharing the knowledge. I thank you for your engagement and joining the conversation today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Thank you.